to the Trinity Force Podcast. Yo, it's that Triforce cast beaming straight to your home. Grab a beer so we know Pone ain't drinking alone. Send an email, a quick tweet, just pick up the phone. Leave a message, hit the beep if you're a creep, watch your tone. Discuss the meta game, patch notes, whatever helps your stats most. Obi-Pone Kenobi is your last hope to snatch gold. So grab your headphones and join in the fun. We'll try enforcing some jokes and some cringeworthy puns. Yo, we can make it together, people. Trinity Force Podcast. These boys are second to none. Now that's the end of the intro. It's time we begun.
Oh, hey guys, welcome to Trinity Force Podcast. Kindred is joining us tonight.
I can't even.
Oh my gosh.
It just happened.
Oh, she's squealing.
By joining us, you mean you just
done.
grabbed her.
Podcast done. Forget it. What's the
Yeah,
point?
you did steal
Never
that
gonna be cuter than that.
Here's our advice: get a small, adorable cat.
Look how cute she is. Oh
my God.
She's adorable, guys.
I want it.
Did you just take a swipe at the camera?
Yeah, she wasn't too happy.
Get this shit out of here.
She's now flicking her tail at me.
Well,
Made her angry.
if you got a camera shoved in your face.
If you guys aren't watching the live stream, then you're missing out because Kindred just made an appearance. My black kitty cat. She wanted to say hello to everybody, just like we're saying hello to you out there in podcast land. Thank you so much for listening to the Trinity Force Podcast. I got a few announcements to make before we jump into our primary topic tonight. The first and foremost is the Four Wards Podcast is actually back in action with 3 new hosts. Haberdashing is still hosting it, but we have Quit Badgering Me, Thallium, and George P. Purdell. They are doing the show every week. They're going to be continuing to teach you guys basic level knowledge of League of Legends to get you better at the game and to teach you things that we can expand on later in our podcast careers. Additionally, they're also... Go ahead.
With this new lineup, so I've been playing fives with Thallium for a while. He's got like the most dry, bland voice, but it works well with the rest of the podcast because everyone has kind of like their own unique voice, so it's really easy to pick out who's talking, and they all have their unique way of speaking as well. Like Badger is a lot different from Thallium, so they actually kind of mesh well together.
Young. I did not know how young that guy was until
that young Badger.
Well, George P
young
is actually
Badger.
younger.
The young
than,
Badger.
He's younger than Badger. He's
That's
20.
it's a young crew, but they know their stuff.
Right. And they're also doing something extra cool on that podcast. They brought correspondents in to do 3-minute segments on specific topics. I don't actually have the topic in front of me, what they talked about. I know they're like doing jungle pathing, like just 3 minutes to tell you quickly, here's the basic jungle path, here's how to get started if you're first learning jungle, here's why you should do that. And they're going to be doing these correspondent segments every single week, and they're going to talk about it. The host of the show are going to talk about it after the correspondent brings in there. So it's a cool way to bring other community members in and talk about different topics and whatnot. So go check out the Four Wards Podcast. They're back in action. The Overwatch Podcast is out there, Into the Iris. You guys can go check that out. That they're a few episodes in. And they just went over to Lucio last week, and they're going to be talking about other champions as that podcast matures. And I'll plug some of our sponsors later in this episode. But right now, I just want to jump into the meat and potatoes of the topics. And that's tonight we're going to talk about going off the book or how to play into the mid game, because if you follow I don't want to say League of Legends, like every game can be, any strategic game can be compared to chess, right? Like chess is the end all be all of strategy. And so a lot of people make comparisons to all esports to chess because there's certain moves you could make, and yeah, you get the idea, right? But we're going to compare chess, or at least like one of these basic level topics, to how that compares to League of Legends. And Dom, I'm going to put you in the spotlight right now to more or less talk about this, or at least get us started in the conversation.
Well, so I had a conversation about this a long time ago with a friend of mine when I was just trying to explain League of Legends, and he's like, oh, it's just like chess, and eventually you're just going off book. I'm like, yeah. But what really drew me back to it was when you guys started doing Vantage League, because I'd been listening to podcasts here and there, but Vantage got me really excited, and just the discussions that you had therein were really interesting. And Adam very regularly brought up the notion that the introduction to every single game of League of Legends is scripted. This is most evident in professional play. If you think back to the majority of Season 6, it felt like the first 10 minutes of every single game played out the exact same way. And that's because, like, when you really think about it, they had played I don't know how many different games and realized this is the most efficient effective way to play every single game, and there's no reason to do anything different because doing so would reduce your chances of winning. And that's really what it comes down to, is like you need to be there are certain ways that you can start every single game that are going to maximize your odds of winning. And these, in chess, I believe that's just called the book. It's the number of tracked introductory moves that you can make that are going to, and their responses that are going to increase or decrease your odds of winning the game. And every single game eventually hits a point where the moves are either relatively untracked, not recalled, or not remembered by the players who are involved, or just haven't actually been explored before. And that's because the combination of moves ends up getting really, really high.
Yeah, they have in chess you have like openings that are named. Like you'll have like King's Gambit or Queen's attack move. That's not one, I don't think. But essentially the idea is people will follow a number of different ways of playing the game. I used to play chess a lot, and I very much hated the book idea of following those things. I went off book pretty early all the time, and I don't really think about it, but it's pretty interesting to compare those two things because, yeah, when we were playing Vantage League, we would show up pretty much throw ourselves into the river area, make sure there were no invades most of the time, and then go about the game normally. And that was a pretty standard thing that happened. It's not like you could do like there's equivalents of doing like a 2-move or 4-move mate in chess where you might go throw like 4 people into the farthest brush in bot lane and say, I'm going to try to get a kill right here real quick and maybe get a huge advantage. But it's pretty risky and doesn't really work out once people know anything about the game.
I mean, laning is really easy. I mean, it's what we're talking about here ultimately is just the laning phase, because there are certain things that you are supposed to do, like major and minor actions. Minor actions are basically getting every CS that you can, harassing whenever you get the opportunity, and then major things would be participating or not participating in a gank. As far as the script goes, I like to think of jungling as more of a choose-your-own-adventure role than it is a strict script, just because you have you started a buff and you get to decide what camp you're going, and then
choose your own adventure or colored by numbers.
Yeah, one of the two.
One of them.
It's kind of a mixture of both, depending on who you're playing as jungle too, because who you're playing might decide on which side of the jungle you start on, which could affect which lane you gank. But then the choice comes in when you're deciding, when you're taking into consideration who your opponents are. Like, you might start bottom, and top lane might be your first ideal gank location, but for some reason they're playing LeBlanc at top lane. Like, I'm not ganking LeBlanc, it's a waste of time. So you go mid lane instead. Yeah,
I mean, and it's also going to depend on who your teammates are in those given lanes. Shyvana is going to have a harder time ganking a low crowd control lane than Maokai. Not that he jungles often, but Maokai.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about this. Like, somebody doing shot calling in early game could be kind of akin to somebody watching 5 people playing chess against 5 other people and trying to explain, like, oh, we should do this over here and this will help over here. Like, it's what the one-on-one system of chess is. So obviously you can see the whole game right there, but yeah, League you have to go way, way higher to really look at the whole macro.
Well, that's a good point though, because at the individual player level, and as far as it applies to solo queue, you only have control of yourself. You do not have any influence on the 9 other people in the game, and that's a lot of variable. And ultimately, that just turns into luck. You will have good luck and you will have bad luck, and that's not to say you can't solo carry yourself out of one thing or another. But there are just going to be times where, because you had no say in how something else played out, because there are 9 other people making decisions, sometimes you lose games because of that, and it's just the sad reality. The person
you're not blackmailing the other people enough. You clearly haven't been thinking.
How do you get all this leverage? What kind of black market are you going to?
How does he know all the people we're going to be playing? He's got a lot of power here.
Sean brought up a good point to me earlier, in that as you progress throughout the game, the book to get to mid game kind of widens. The number of plays that you can make there's more tracked plays, right, as you get it, because more players are following those tracked plays to get into mid game. But for a lot of you out there who are stuck in silver or bronze or low gold or whatever it is, Sean brought up a point that there's actually 2 books that you have to memorize. You have to memorize the early game, then you have to memorize the Aram version of that book because
Yep.
it doesn't follow the general.
The script restarts again as soon as the laning phase is over.
Exactly.
Everybody rushes to mid, and you're right back to like a point of normalcy because you're kind of afraid of the chaos.
Adam has been playing his Smurf account and duoing with me a lot lately, and the number of times he you don't start ranting, but you're always just like, why is everybody grouping mid? Why are we always in mid lane? What's going on? And I'm just like, welcome to low gold. I got to gold 2 over the weekend, so I guess I'm not low gold anymore. But
when
yeah,
we were
welcome
first
to low
starting to
gold,
play.
high silver, all that stuff, because that's just what that's what people were doing. I mean, it just sort of if people don't know where else to go, they just head to mid lane and try and figure it out from there.
Well, it's really
I mean,
easy to fall in that trap too, and it's something that I've been trying to practice myself. I still see it up in the higher platinum games and diamond whatever it is. People still will gravitate toward the mid, but there's always that one person that wants to go off and side push or split push.
I was about to say, like, thinking about at like a higher, like we can look at plat and almost say like an extra like piece of the book at plat is that inevitable one person that wants to go, and it's kind of whoever goes to the wrong side of the map at the wrong time ends up losing the game, and just not being that guy ends up winning the day.
Oh,
I
who picks
won
the
a
right
game
side, right?
last night for the opposite of what you just described. I won a game because the Twisted Fate on my team tilted, got really pissed off at everybody, refused to be a part of the team, and my team, I don't know what happened, but they picked up on how that was going to happen and just or how that was going to play out every single time. And we just sort of worked with that and got really lucky because their most fed player kept going after the split pushing Twisted Fate, who was doing a bad job. Like he was using all of his abilities to go to the split push lane instead of going to the like split pushing and then teleporting into the fight. It's like normally you want to save Twisted Fate ult or teleport stuff like that to get to the fight once they start, so then you can you've been pushing an advantage. But
That
this person
situation
was
is
using
such
it-
an exception, though. It's
Yeah,
such
no,
an exception.
It's just funny that you brought it up. There, we're like, yeah, I won a game the exact opposite.
It's low elo. It doesn't.
No, they were all high gold, low plat. That's mid.
Well, there you go. Okay.
Mid elo.
Right.
Honestly, that's another thing where it comes down to the randomness of like, okay,
Yeah.
so things went random, and then the 4 people recognized that it wasn't going to go their way, so they ended up like
Making the best of a
piecemealing
shitty
something
situation.
together in order to win the day.
I mean, it was the 4 remaining of us just digging our heels in and saying we're not losing this game because of one asshole. But
Well, speaking to the song and dance or the scripted part of this, when I do replay reviews or if I even watch one of my friends play and I want to give them advice, a lot of time my replay reviews only go to the first 20 minutes. And I know, I usually apologize to the person. I'm like, I could have spent another hour on the rest of the game, but I feel like the entire game would have played out differently had you followed the script more closely. Because when we're in laning phase, there's so many little pieces you can do to either accelerate the script to get to that mid game, or there's so many little pieces you can do to make yourself more powerful that you walk in the mid game, that I feel like a lot of players' weaknesses, and a lot of players like, oh man, I was doing so well, or I was doing poorly here, and then the game, went an extra 40 minutes because this and that happened. It's because players aren't respecting the script. They aren't respecting the beginning of the game. Like, you have plenty of times if you're playing bottom lane, even if you're down a kill, to come back and get that kill back as a 2v2. You have plenty of times in mid lane when there's a 1v1 kill, you can come back and play it, but you just have to play it. I hate to say it this way, but you have to play it in the correct manner. There's playing around cooldowns is an example of like a mini game that you can play with somebody, because if you're playing into Heimerdinger, for example, he drops a turret, you kill it, he's now used his E. That is your window of opportunity to go in and make a trade, like a really good trade with that person, and swing the laning script back in your favor, so that now you are, you're ahead in CS, you're ahead in the trades. You made them afraid of you, and you are. You're making the game more advantageous for yourself.
the other reason it's hard to review really past 20 minutes, certainly past mid game, is because during the laning phase especially, there are just fewer variables really affecting the lane. In the bottom lane, there is you and then 3 X factors, sometimes 4 or 5 if a jungler shows up. And then in the solo lanes, it's just 1 variable and then the jungler. I mean, so really 3 variables at max and everything, but for a lot of it, it's just you and the other person going back and forth and doing that dance. And that's where you can really figure out what the individual player issues are. Because once you get to that mid game and then really late game, there's so many things that happen earlier on, like Adam said, that really influenced how the mid and late games played out.
So there really is a balance between the importance of the early and the mid game. We're discussing early game now in terms of analyzing it because of the script and how it's just so hard to analyze a mid game that can go off the rails by the number of factions that occur early on, right? But we've for the majority of solo queue's life, I think we have been proponents of setting yourself up in the early game will give that team that did it better the better odds to win, right? The team that sets themselves up in the early game, they're probably going to win the game more often than not because it carries into the mid game.
Yeah, that's where the whole win lane, win game concept comes.
Right. So over the weekend, I was talking about how I played against 3 different Rivens, right? And all these Rivens got first blood on me, and they just dumpstered me in lane. I'm like, oh man, I'm so bad against Riven. I got to fix this. And then I thought about it for a couple more minutes and realized, no, in each of those games where I got destroyed, my team won that game, even though top lane was a complete failure. Riven had 11 kills and 0 deaths. That kind of loss, and that goes to speak to, yeah, you can dominate laning phase with a champion like Riven, but the mid game is an entirely different beast. You take Riven to the mid game, Riven's hard to play mechanically, but playing her in the mid game, I would argue, is much harder.
Oh yeah.
Because
you have to make so many split-second decisions.
Right.
Well, you have to respond so correctly to so many different things coming your way, and to do so at a really at a high level
in the middle of a team fight,
incredibly different. Yeah.
Well, things get way more complicated as soon as you add the extra variables into it. When it's just one person laning against somebody else, things are much more simplified. But as soon as you end up adding a bunch of other factors, shit can snowball out of control really easily.
Which goes to your point earlier about why sometimes in some elos mid games goes back into a script. If you're you see a Riven that did well in early laning phase, then they try roaming or they try ganking, it doesn't go well. They're gonna go back to split pushing.
They're gonna go back to what works or what they think works
working for them, and it's back to a script. I know I can do this, so I'm gonna keep split pushing top and see what happens from that. And it's the same thing with the ARM that you would see in Silver. Right, we don't really know what to do right now. Dragon's dead. We've taken all the outer turrets, so I guess everyone go mid and just push.
Go ahead, sir.
Fuck.
No, go ahead.
No, so the thing that I was thinking of that's a little bit we're talking about off the book, but the thing that I was thinking of from a support mentality, that instead of what I think a lot of people do in lower elos is they just always have the mentality of get back to the lane. Oh, that's where I'm supposed to be. That's what I have to go right back to the lane. And once you start getting a bit higher up, you start seeing people buy pink wards, put them in interesting locations that are either difficult to spot or great for spotting people out. And you're taking away power from somebody just by getting vision on them really early. And that's, I think, some way that people in lower elos could start going off book early, but not really losing anything for your laner. I know that Pwn will say, "Hey, don't run away from me, please."
I mean, it becomes that 75 gold.
But I'm talking about the
gold investment for it.
I'm talking about seeing the opportunities to go off book early on that aren't going to hurt you, but are advantageous to your team in general. And that also happens in the ARAM thing. It's you get warding out into different lanes so you can see rotations quicker, and that's how you break those kind of things. If you can get the information on when people are moving, you can catch people out in those transitions. And that's how you break ARAMs, because otherwise you're just sitting in there and whoever has a better push might end up winning it eventually, but it's kind of difficult to call.
I was watching a jungle, I don't want to call it a tutorial, but I mean, the guy was just sort of giving lessons and explaining all of his decision making and just the almost jungle macro as opposed to the specifics of a champion and everything. So he was reviewing one of his other videos, and I wish I had his name. I don't. But one of the things that he said that really stuck with me is that junglers should always be trying to go where the fights are, or where they think they're going to be, but definitely where the fights are, because there are a lot of times where a jungler can, be at base or in the middle of the jungle, and just by virtue of like heading over in that direction can show up in time to really influence the outcome of that fight. So laners, you should really be like always thinking the jungler is on their way. I got to do this quickly and then get out, instead of, and how many times have you spent the extra 3 seconds chasing down a kill only to turn around and die to a jungler as a result?
Reacting as soon as you see them as opposed to anticipating them coming.
Yeah,
Right.
But the reason that stuck with me, and I started applying it to my own support play and trying to be a whole lot more proactive, especially with, like, I used to roam a lot just to throw wards down and that type of thing, but not, and maybe making a play, but not with the intent of making a play. Now I've gotten a lot better at just looking at the map and seeing that there is a fight going on in mid or within a reasonable proximity, even on the red side jungle. And like Adam will attest this. How many times did I say I'm going mid and like just start beelining, even though the fight looked like it was 3/4 of the map of the way, and then showing up and having a meaningful impact on that fight, whether it's landing a binding or getting a shield on, a meaningful heal, any of that type of stuff. Like, it can have a really, really big impact on that on the outcome of your game, and it's just a seemingly little decision.
If there is, like, let's say that there is something that commonly happens in all of the games that you're in, if you do something weird enough that isn't expected, might hit pay dirt.
Sean, you hit a topic that was a topic that I wanted to kind of transition into, because Serial had brought this up earlier, and that's the roaming portion of it, right? I'm going to use the comparison of like wrestling, or I guess you can do this with any sport. Think of the sport that you played in high school and what they teach you for the basic level. Like in wrestling, that's what I learned, right? They teach you how to do double legs and single legs. Well, at a certain point, double legs and single legs stop working really well because people learn how to defend them.
Because people get used to it. Yeah.
So now you have to go off book and learn how to do a double leg to single leg switch. Right, like you shoot in for a single and go for a double. Sorry, it's a single to double switch, and that throws people off because they're not ready for you to switch over to it. Or you learn to shoot for double and come up and start grappling, and now that has taken another evolutionary step when it comes to boxing in the UFC. There's a lot of people who are setting up shots with boxing or setting up boxing with shots.
Yeah, there's going to be like
right
0.02% of people are going to be like, yeah, I understand those things.
And that's the only comparison I can think of.
We're going for some real weird crossover this episode.
Well, there's plenty of those. You're always going off the book to set something else up. And so I think this is where I wanted to bring this back to the league, is we always harp on learning as any laner to spend as much time as you can getting as much CS as you can. And I think that's kind of a crutch that people lean on, is I have to stay here and get as much CS as I can. They don't start thinking outside of it, because at a certain point, that 2 CS or 5 or a whole wave of CS that you lost for the kill and assist to leading into an objective is more important, right? And bottom lane can do this a lot. Dom had brought it up. There's a lot of times where in bottom lane, I'll leave the lane entirely to start walking up to the mid. Like, we're level 6, and I'll just start walking toward the mid lane rather than stay down there to push the lane out and keep doing my little song and dance, because I feel like something could happen.
On a turret.
What's that?
Rather than staying in the lane and getting 3 CS and 4 pot shots on a turret or something.
Right. Now we are walking up there because I see the jungler doing this and da-da-da.
This almost comes down to a conversation of, instead of thinking like I need to do or like I need to collect this, like I need to collect experience, I need to collect gold, I need to do whatever, the conversation instead should be like, where can I provide the most influence?
Yes.
Well, then it's a matter of looking at your decisions as positive and negative actions. And getting a CS is a positive action, but it's a very, very small positive one that you're taking. Just like missing a CS is a very, very small negative action and everything. So the question you should always be asking yourself, where can I make the biggest positive action? During the laning phase, it's really just CSing and trying to, maybe setting up an opportunity for a kill and getting one. But as the game goes on, I'm not saying CS is unimportant, but CS is not the most positive action that you can take the longer the game goes on.
The value goes down over time.
How many of us have lost games because one member of our team was busy clearing a meaty or not even that meaty looking wave when an important objective needed to go down or needed to be contested? I mean, I'm betting it's everybody on this call.
Right. Oh, that's something that helped me push
everybody
through.
Listening.
Probably, because there's something that it was probably when I was pushing through to get to platinum for the very first time, was learning to let a wave bounce off a turret. That juicy 2 wave that's pushing the turret's going to take it down by a quarter life should be dealt with, But due to outlying circumstances of us getting knocked, our inhibitor is getting knocked down, or our mid lane turret is getting knocked, the door is being knocked at, I have to sacrifice that. Or Baron is up. Like the biggest one that I think the biggest one that anybody across all of League of Legends has ever made is going down to bot side at 25 minutes when Baron is the next objective and the enemy team is going for Baron.
The biggest mistake that you can make as a jungler is to be on the opposite side of the map of the minion that you need to smite.
Yeah.
And that you have more power over than anyone else on your team.
And it doesn't matter if you made the call or someone else on your team made the call and you disagreed with it. If your team, or the opponent team for that matter, like if teams are going to Baron, your responsibility as the jungler is to be there regardless of what you think the better action should be. Like you can't deviate from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all just like, yeah.
I mean, there's no real argument there other than like recognize, and this happens a lot, that I don't want to encourage people doing that split pushing shit where they're way off book and they're not. God, we got to stop saying that. We can't say off book this entire episode. But like they're doing their own thing, and you're like, oh, this looks like a great fight, and then don't think about, oh shit, we're down a player. And while you can and probably will blame a lot of that on the other member, that's also not recognizing that you're completely down a player. And that's happened to me, I know. I'll be like, that looks good. My thrush looks going to hit that character. All in, shit, we're down. We just lost really, really hard because we were down our AD carry or something.
That's where coming the old think 2 or 3 steps ahead that everybody knows. Everybody knows the first thing you learn in chess is try to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of what the person is going to play, right? Like I've never learned any chess strategy outside of try to think 2 steps ahead of what you've learned. And that's the same thing in League. If I hit this hook and I pull them in, what will happen? And you have to think about it real fast. Like you have to, you don't get the time, to sit there and what is it, 30 seconds?
It's actually funny because there's also jokes about like the beginners in chess think 1 move ahead, the like intermediaries think 3, the advanced think like 5, and then the masters think 1 move ahead.
Yeah,
like
right.
I mean, it rolls around to like really honestly, it comes down to like how much do you know about the game to be able to again exert your influence on the game and be able to get yourself in an advantageous position to win.
That applies to both. That applies to both League and chess, very, very much so. Because
honestly, it applies to any competitive effort. Period.
Anything that's anything at all, and especially when it's a game is very, very high % mental, which I guess most games actually end up being way more mental than a lot of people might think. Like it's very clear in chess, obviously, and then and in League too. You have to think. Your brain is a lot of what's going on here.
Let me
Mechanics
tell
can only
you,
take you so far.
Dom and I played. I don't know I think I played for 6 hours last Saturday, maybe 4. It was 4 to 6 hours. It was something like that.
I played 6 games. You sat out for one of those, and Punch joined in, I think, after 2 games or something like that. But yeah, I played 6 games on Saturday and 3 Friday night.
Yeah, by the time that I was done with I played 6 total because I played with 1 with Punch after we got done. So
yeah,
by the time that was done, my wife had got home. We're taking care of the kids and stuff, and we're settling down for dinner. And I'm like, man, I feel exhausted. Like I had just done a workout that day, and it was seriously it's that mental exhaustion.
Mental.
Yeah,
it's the highs and lows of the chemicals that are being produced because of winning and losing and stress, hormones, and just tension and fucking having to carry scrubs. I love you, Dom.
Whatever. There's nothing wrong with being carried. I'm fine. I'm fine being carried.
I told Dom last night. Dom lost he was on a 9-game win streak and he lost one last night. And I said, Dom, you should have waited for me. I would have made that 15.
Wow.
10, you mean? But
well, no, I mean like total. I told you, I'm turning my
that's
11-game win streak into a 17-game win streak on my Smurf.
Oh yeah, you did.
That is happening. I'm gonna make it happen.
I won the one after.
Why specifically 17?
Because that fills out your profile list on Match It or OPGG 17. It shows the first 17.
And what are you gonna do with this besides brag on Twitter and what else?
That's all.
Anything
brag?
else? Oh yeah, you're just gonna.
Personal
Gonna
pleasure.
love himself.
Yeah.
Hey
Yeah.
guys, make sure do not check out the videos because you don't want to see what Pone just did.
I'm gonna do that.
I had poo on Pone, but one of those games where I fed a Riven, he was in that game, and he totally carried us to the mid game until I became relevant. So
You're welcome.
thanks for that, buddy.
There was one game where you had given up. I mean, and they were on the Nexus. They were taking down our turrets, and you're like, this game is lost. And then so like that's when I decided to pull a Chira and just do something stupid, and it turned out to drag us back into it and win. So yeah, I mean, don't just give up because it looks like
Well, I was dead. I was dead with 20 seconds left. I'm like, this game, I
everybody.
don't know what you're gonna
It
do.
was the
but-
lone support standing. What did I say? It wasn't me being good. It was them being really dumb and bad. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I didn't do anything like anything noteworthy. I just got them to stop attacking the turrets, and that was
Brilliant.
was
All that
enough.
you needed to do.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess something to come back around to a normal topic.
League is normal.
What? No, I understand
go
that.
ahead.
Oh yeah, no, but how would we advise people to learn how to go off book? I think is a good way to maybe
Take
transition this because
risks.
it's obviously experience helps, but it's like you're saying there's no. Like you want to do the most positive thing, but you don't know what that is if you're transitioning from a bot that goes just straight down lane and stays there till they die or back into a player that's making better decisions and trying to influence those. What would you guys suggest for different roles that might help them start to do that, or things they could start trying to do to learn those?
I mean,
those
across
actions?
the board, it's minimize the number of decisions you make or actions you take that are going to get you killed. I mean, like just the number of meaningless deaths or ultimately fruitless deaths that people give up. I think, especially in the early game, really negatively impacts the outcome of so many of their games, and they don't realize it. Like, it's good if you win a game and you died 9 times in the process, but could you have won 10 minutes earlier if you had only died 4?
I think not dying is number one rule of MOBAs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wanted to go back to
HP
what-
greater than 0 equals victory.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what Dom said earlier about measuring what would have the most positive impact at that point in time in the game. And I think in order to do that, you need to have I'm not going to say a book, but like a general plan or idea of what objectives you're going to focus on at what point. Like what are the most important objectives that we need to take? And then plan your actions around that, right? So if you're top lane and then Fire Dragon is spawning, like, you know what? We should probably take Fire Dragon. So I'm going to save my teleport. I'm not going to use teleport to get back to top lane now and get that 3 CS. I'm going to save it for the fight that never breaks out at Dragon.
Don't assume that your team can read your mind.
That
I think
too.
a lot of people really make a lot of decisions expecting backup from their team, and like their team has no idea when you're going to do something crazy.
I mean,
like,
the only time you can do that is if you're playing somebody like Malphite, who has the biggest fucking, like, here is a giant arrow of me running in and doing something important.
those are good cues and indicators for what you're going to do, but
I just ping. I ping on my way. If I'm playing Malphite,
You can ping everything.
It's a triple ping, man.
I go ping, 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 and that means I am going to go in at some point. It might not mean I'm going
Yeah.
in right now, but I'm like ping, ping, ping. That means I'm going. And I think a lot of people understand that ping means something is going to happen. Be fucking ready for it.
2 pings isn't serious enough. 3 pings is the perfect amount of serious.
Well, I wanted to talk to that point that Mitch said, something that I don't think a lot of people have talked about recently because streaming has become the norm. I do believe that watching streams or watching people that are better than you play is a really good way to learn how to go off the book or learn how to play
Dave, all right.
the game. Because, Sean, just hold that thought for just 2 seconds,
Yep.
and I'll let you go right after me. And because there's something with watching another player play the game. You may not take that information in right away, and you may be passively watching it. But actually, like when you go to sleep at night, your brain is learning. Your brain starts digesting every single thing you saw during that day. And I'm going to go with this a little bit off too. Somebody emailed us a while ago and said, "Hey, I can't play for 2 weeks. What can I do? And I said, go watch streams and then start thinking about how you would play that specific scenario, or play a scenario out in your head and think about how you would play that. Because as you sleep, your brain will digest that information you've been thinking about, the stuff you've been learning, and you'll be able to go into the game and try to practice that. Or you'll remember, hey, I remember this working out well. I'm going to try it myself.
Think about what they're doing. Like if they do something different than what you planned on doing, judge the outcome, see if it worked out, and then try to think about why did that work. Why? So he did something that I did not think was a good idea, but it turned out to be a good idea. Why is that? I guess something that the Hearthstone podcast talked about, like one of the first episodes, is just turn up the volume and think about what plays a Hearthstone streamer is making.
Weldon, when Weldon Green's come on the show a couple of times, I don't remember what pro player he was talking about at the time, but he was saying that like one of the guys that he had coached at one point was just like some dude that all he did was, I mean, he didn't have that much time to play.
Freeze.
Yeah. So as soon as like basically every moment that guy could, since he couldn't play all the time based on like his parental situation with family not letting him play all the time, he would watch streams and just pretend that he was the other person and basically like break down every single thing that happened.
He would ask why.
Yeah, he would ask why. Like, why did that work even though it seemed really, really dumb? Why didn't this work even though it seemed like a really good like decision to make? And honestly, it just comes down to like, if you can make the analysis of figuring out why some things do and don't work, a lot of this game and a lot of anything is just building upon fundamentals to the point where they just become second nature. And it's knowing how to do something instantly perfectly, or even how to do something to the point where like you're just not consciously doing it anymore. We were talking about this kind of previous to the show where we were basically talking about Adam's really good at wave management in comparison to some of the other people on the show. I am a garbage boy laner when it comes to wave management, unless I'm just doing something that like I just do because I've played this game a fuckload of times. I don't put a lot of cognitive thought into being like, okay, you know, in 3 waves, I want this wave, I want the lane to be in this particular spot so I can do this thing. Like, I don't think that far ahead for a certain situation. I'd probably be better off for it, but compared to somebody who hasn't played this game before at all, I manipulate that stuff just unconsciously compared to that. And again, that's just putting in the time, and that's recognizing just, you know, general patterns on how to play the game. People love pattern recognition. You just have to figure out what patterns work for you, what patterns typically don't work for other people, and find like the best intersection for where to abuse both of them.
Do you guys find that certain things in any, like, basically anytime a game loads, are there certain things that are more important to you every single time the game, you know, loads, you know, getting the first turret or getting your turret by within a certain time frame?
Ever since they added the extra gold for first turret killed, my goal every single game is to make it so that my lane's turret dies first. But that's like an incentive that they've added, you know. That's not before this point. I didn't necessarily think that way, but like ever since that was added, again, it just becomes a thing like, hey, this is something in the game that will give you an advantage. I like that
advantage. Before they
added
that, I loved getting the turret down just as quickly as possible.
It feels good when it happens.
Mitch,
you
do
might
you
want
feel
to
the same way?
You might want to say that. You might want to say the opposing turret, because I like the idea that you're like, I don't care which one of our turrets is dying, but our lanes is going down first.
I mean, it honestly depends, because if you're getting shit on hard enough in lane, sometimes you want them to take your turret so that you can free farm for the next 15 minutes.
There is almost a rubber band effect as far as that that bot lane turret goes when you're the support. I always feel like no matter what's going on, I always kind of end up having to make my way back over there, even if I would rather be doing something else because I think it could have a meaningful impact. But it's always one of those. It's a meaningful impact isn't going to be more impactful than me being down where the turret is, because that's also where the AD carry is still farming. And when those turrets fall, when one of the turrets falls usually, but certainly when my opponent is down, like all of a sudden the map is freed up for me, and it's just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that when we take that, I'm usually I am warding a lot more and trying to get more plays in like mid lane. But it also, the thing that ends up getting sacrificed, I think a lot of the time is if you're not careful, you'll fall really behind in experience in that scenario. And I have found myself like a level down on the enemy support, which means I am like 3 levels down on everyone else in the game, which can be bad. Obviously you want more levels, but you don't want to sacrifice your entire time just to keep warding, even if that has diminishing returns, especially if you just run out of wards. You're like, what am I doing around here?
Yeah,
can't really do much.
It's important to get wards down, but then once your 3 wards are down, or the 2 if you're only doing that and because you want to hold on to one, like then you still got to make your pathing and your movements around the map meaningful.
My pitfall as a jungler is trying to do too much with too little.
You feel forced to do things when you jungle.
Yeah.
Like every time you jungle, I feel like you're just sweating life the entire time.
Are you talking Adam specifically?
Yeah,
or
I'm talking
no.
Adam specifically.
Adam's
Like
a sweaty man
Adam super fucking stresses when he jungles, and like even when there's nothing on the line, I feel like it's one of those moments where you just feel, for you at least, you feel like there's so much weight of the game on your shoulders to be like, I need to get in there and I need to do this because like it will help the team more than anything. That's exactly right. And
it's one of those things. It's been I really like jungling. Okay,
it's fun.
I like playing marksman more right now because I think I like to play it more because I understand it better, and it would take me a year. I started jungling at the beginning of the season, right? Like I was trying to learn a new role, and I did. I learned how to jungle at a very basic level, and I like that. And
then
when
you played Kindred.
Yeah, and I played Kindred, who's a marksman jungler, right? I played her all the time, and I learned how to jungle at a basic level.
Honestly,
I learned how to jungle the gold. Go ahead.
Kindred jungle moved you into AD carry.
Oh yeah, very much so.
100%.
Oh, absolutely. Just learning how to move around and auto attack and auto attack cancel and kite. I was like, oh well, we can take this to AD carry. But like, I get in the game and just probably like every other person out here who's jungling, I feel like there's too much weight on my shoulders because it's been ingrained in me over 6 seasons that the jungler is the reason the team is losing. I preach and I'll know and I can say it, like the jungler is not responsible for your lane. When you're in the jungle, you feel like the lanes are that lane. You're up farming Gromp and bottom lane got killed. You're like, I should have fucking been there. I should have known that was going to happen, and I should have fucking been there.
It does. It can become something where it's like, okay, you recognize that like I could have been there or I should have been there or whatever. But like the other piece of that puzzle is, or the other way to think about it is, your team can also see where you're at on the map, so they don't need to go aggressive when they don't know where the other jungler is and they know you cannot help them. Like, go ahead.
I don't care if I die to the enemy jungler, as long as when I look at my map, I see that my jungler is doing something meaningful somewhere else. Ganking top, ganking mid, taking Rift Herald, counter jungling and taking buffs over there. That's fine. When I die to the jungler and my jungler is fucking killing raptors, that's when I get really pissed off because that's not the best use of your time at that point. And, you could have been making it. You should be making an impact somewhere else because you know where your opponent is, and you now can, in theory, create an advantage in 2 other lanes or go and steal shit. But taking your own raptors, to me, like and that's just an example. I just hate it when I see my jungler doing nothing and the other junglers being proactive. But if my jungler's doing something, like is genuinely helping the team out in the process, then it's fine. I don't care. Like
honestly, that comes down to it. Like you just need to stay active. You have to be doing something, and it comes back to that whole conversation that you had about, or that you brought up when it's like, okay, getting that CS is like that one negative point. I mean, that one positive point, and missing it's that one negative point. As a jungler, those point disparities are way bigger because like a lot of it has to deal with where you're at map presence wise.
Yeah, I mean, and jungle and support, a little bit of gold goes a really long way.
Most definitely.
I mean, so it's I know, I'm sure it's a really hard decision to make. I mean, it's not, but it's just one of as a honestly, just as a lane player, it's infuriating. Like, and I think that's ultimately why so many laners get angry at the junglers, is because they get ganked and they feel like their jungler is just sort of herbivoring it up, and that's not been particularly effective strategy for like 2 seasons now.
Well, I mean, that also
mastering
completely depends on like timing though. Like
Some of
I mean,
it.
yeah, but okay, if it's a jungler who has been very clearly power farming or has just not ganked at all, sure. But if it's just such bad time, well, I didn't say such bad timing, but the timing worked out where they were in the middle of a clear and you got ganked, and you're like, what the hell? How could you be doing Raptors right now?
You also can't get upset for somebody who's like trying to gank and can't make something work, and then you
that's a
immediately
totally
go and die
different story.
too.
Not every gank works, but
Right. But the thing is, like, there's a disparity when the other team has a gank that goes right. We forget that like someone else is trying to. And I say this as somebody who has played very little jungle this season. I've played a whole lot in the past.
Yeah, but you've played enough to still speak with some
I've played
authority here.
enough in jungle that I'm comfortable playing jungle forever and ever.
Actually, 3 of you. Punch, you played a lot of jungle for a stretch, didn't you?
I floundered around in the jungle.
Much like
period of
me.
time.
You pretended to play jungle.
I played
Yes.
a Moo, but that was solo top lane in season 1 because that was the only character I played
Right.
until level 30.
Yeah, I did some jungling in season 1, but
I mean,
that doesn't count. It was season. I mean, the jungle doesn't even look the same. It doesn't play the same.
No,
there
I
were
was
like
same here.
there were like 4 champions that could pull it off back then. It's like you could do Warwick or get better at the game because you're don't have the runes because you're level 15.
Man, I went back and I watched. Dom and I had a discussion about the word viable. Of course, you all saw it. I'm not going to get into that. You guys know my stance on that, right? And Dom was like, "Hey, ADC Kennen was played in Worlds." So I was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that happened." I watched all 5 hours of the finals between Rox and SKT, and I don't remember Kennen ADC being played. So I went back and I watched the game. I went back and I watched the ADC Kennen game, and I went back and I watched the Rise pick because everyone's like, "Oh man, Faker pulled out Rise in Worlds and it was amazing." And I went back and watched that. I'm like, I don't remember these things, right? Anyway, long story short, I went back and I watched the game, and this goes to what Dom was saying in season 1 or even Mitch, and that's. I'm like, all right, they're dragon. That dragon looks like the dragons we're fighting now. Oh, I forgot that dragon had 5 stacks at that point, and each stack meant different things. You know, like that type of thing. I'm like, well, yeah, it was worth local gold.
Gold.
Right?
No. Back in 4 and
No,
previous.
5. This was 5.
Yeah, I'm saying it was
He's
gold.
saying like
it
it
was
used
worth
to
gold
be
in
worth
season
global
4
gold.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. It was worth global gold.
Ages ago.
I had forgotten that the stacks that we have now on Cloud, Fire, and Earth and all that stuff
Boy,
were part of the number of dragons that spawned. And I went, why does that dragon look like that? Oh, right, this is what that does. And so
I wonder if the season 5 like matches and just overall are not going to hold up well because the game like transitioned away from gold for so many different objectives and to these passive buffs, but then all of it changed again right away thereafter. But that stuff's not going to get explained on a per game basis, you know?
Well, you know what's funny about that? I saw a tweet earlier from, I think it was not Esportspedia. What are they now? They've switched.
Esports wikis.
Esports Wiki. Right. They had just created an infographic for the spectator overlay in preparation for Worlds, and somebody had tweeted at is it Ariel and I can't remember the other writer that heads their production agency, but they were like, "Hey, I heard there was rumors of a new spectator overlay going to be used at Worlds. Can you tell me more about that?" And Esports Wiki was like, "I really hope not, because we just made this," and they posted this, and it was a infographic of how to break down the spectator overlay.
I hope to God they add Keystone masteries to that
Yes,
Wouldn't that be
spectator
nice?
overlay. It's honestly unacceptable that it has taken that we went through the entire season and playoffs and we still don't have that information at a glance.
I know it's.
Hey,
Go ahead.
just remember that we used to have 6 people in the game per team, and that last person had the summoner spell that just revealed everything. So we've come a long
right.
way, guys.
There's not probably a good way to do this. This will never happen. But I've always wanted to see the spectator overlay have what levels people put in their abilities on the overlay. Because there's a lot of times where I'll watch somebody play a champion, and I'm like, I can't wait until they click on that champion so I can see how many points they have and everything.
Uh-huh.
God, I don't
I
know
thought the
how
same
you would
thing.
possibly do that.
I don't
it's the
think
same
it's
so
thing. I don't
much
know.
info.
There's no way
You
it's
do
possible.
that.
Yeah.
You could do that if you like blacked out the bottom just a small part of the bottom of the map where it's unlikely action's going to be happening, and then you just filled that with data. But I don't know if that's the most user-friendly way of doing it.
It's not.
I just thought about you know how if you ever watch speedrunners, they occasionally will have their entire like they'll have the inputs show up, like all the inputs that they're doing at one time. Like it would be great if past just seeing the levels of things, all 10 people, you could see all of their inputs on the screen at once. So you know what they're doing. You know who's freaking out a lot.
And there's somebody who has their inputs all set up to be like FGHJ or something crazy in the middle
just
of their
to fuck
keyboard.
with people?
Just to fuck with people on stream.
That'd be great.
Like, why is F on B? That doesn't make sense. B is for back.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Speaking of hotkeys, if you're, something I'm going to do is I'm going to set. I think I'm going to set either my mouse button or like I don't know T to be target champions only. Because one of my pitfalls as a marksman is being able to harass well under a turret, and I know I need to learn how to do that, especially with like Caitlyn, for example, who has a really long range, and I need to set some kind of hotkey that'll target only champions to be able to do it.
I already got it. on mine. This button.
No, I'm using T.
Is it easy to hold down your mouse button and right click and move around and stuff as a marksman?
If you get used to it, also I don't know yet because I'm not a marksman and haven't really used it very much.
I use one of my mouse buttons to cast, but it's for self-casting everything that's on the E button, just because the majority of those are like shields or heals and that type of thing. And the number of times that's saved me.
I played Karma and AERF the other day. Do you know how often you have to do Alt-E with an AERF? Because it's a 2-second cooldown. You're like, you just Alt-E, 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 Alt-E. And yeah, I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, like, if this was a competitive game mode, I am losing precious time by having to press Alt and then E. I'm losing probably a second or a half a second every time. I'm like,
to self-cast?
Yeah, I should probably. Yeah, I was like, if I was going to play this all the time, I should just bound it, right?
But there are so many, especially supports, but I mean, there are just so many champions where the shield or heal is on, or some type of steroid like that is on the E button that it just, I mean, Orianna, Karma, Nami.
Janna.
Yeah. I mean, just
Lulu.
So many.
Ivern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shields are on E.
Yeah.
Did we?
That's guys. Why doesn't that just be our takeaway for the entire? Here's how you go off book. Shields are on E.
Shields are on E.
I should call the episode "Shields are on E." That should be our ranked
that'll
fives
tell
name.
people what we. I mean, are we playing a ranked fives after this with a new team because the last one got disbanded?
We don't really have we don't really have like a mid laner, right? Like that's always been.
Hey, I'll play Aurelion Sol again. I'll play that shit
play Corki
all year.
I will channel your inner whale.
Oh shit, let's do that, guys. I will 100% play Corki. Yeah,
all right, I'll let you do it. All right, cool.
Thanks, Pops. Real appreciate it.
You played a pretty good Aurelion Sol last time.
Yeah, Sean's a mid laner. What we don't have is a jungler.
I'm just mid and top lane now. Man.
Sean's a way better jungler.
I'll play Jungle Zac or Aurelion Sol.
Sean can play Yasuo mid and Swain. Like that's the extent of his mid lane.
The only two champions I've played in the past.
What happened to LeBlanc?
3 months.
Yeah, Sean, you know what's funny about Sean is he has that pocket.
He didn't play her. That's what happened.
He has that pocket LeBlanc, but he has to get a kill before at 6 or before, and then once he does, he just pops off.
LeBlanc.
That's every LeBlanc.
It's Sean specifically. Like Sean can, no offense, Sean, but you can never come back if you don't get that pre-6 kill.
Oh, I fucking realize this because I do not fucking know what I am doing in the mid lane, nor have I known what I am doing in the mid lane.
But once he gets it, and he's ahead. He's down in bottom lane and pop, you're dead, and he's down. He does that. He does the LeBlanc thing. But like if he doesn't get that kill at 6,
the buttons, guys. I don't know.
Well, I mean. To be fair, on somebody like that who gets ahead and then gets such big advantages when you have like one item and somebody else doesn't, and your damage is absurd early, you feel. I will say that might be one of the most satisfying feelings in this entire game is just knowing that like getting that fucking troll grin as soon as you know something goes well really early and that you're just about to have the best time of your life.
This game's over, boys.
For the next 15 minutes.
Every time I play Alistar or Tom Cash.
Hey, I have a question for you.
Go for it.
Do you know what else is a really good feeling?
No.
Supporting this podcast.
Oh well,
That could have gone a lot of directions.
I got real fucking nervous there for a second, but yeah, that would be a wonderful feeling.
You know how you can support this podcast? There's a number of ways you can support this podcast. I'm going to tell you. You can go support us via GameFly. Everyone knows GameFly is, right? You go sign up. You get games every single month. You can play them. I mean, there's tons of them. T-Force GG talks about them every week. GameFlyOffer.com/TFN. You can get Loot Crate, which is tons of awesome nerd crap coming to your door. Yeah, I'm a great sponsor. This is turning into like a Bill Burr / Joe Rogan version of like doing our sponsors. But no, seriously.
I think every crate has a shirt, right?
Yeah, it has some kind of
Everyone has a shirt?
wearable.
Or they have stuff like this amazing cup that I currently have right here and drink coffee out of every Saturday.
I'm not wearing my Bill and Ted shirt. It's blue. It's just like this color, blue, but it's a Bill and Ted shirt. But yeah, try lootcrate.com/TFN using code BRIDGE10, like the bridge you walk over, for 10% off your first order. Or you could just subscribe to us on Patreon and hear Cereal Box and Days Untold every single month, because we actually have Kale and Riven for September's podcasts. And those are they should be in your inbox by now, if you're listening to it after the live show.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, I'm like, are they done? Because that'd be a crazy turnaround time of 2 days for both, or a day for both.
They should. Oh, he'll have them done by tonight. Yeah. What is next month, Serial? I know we have at least one or two lined up.
I think a Shen is coming soon, and maybe a Thresh.
River
I believe
Shen?
are happening.
Didn't we already
River
do
Shen?
Thresh?
No, we have not done Thresh.
Oh, okay. I know I had a couple guys email me. They're like, "Hey, I do Wukong. Hey, I do this." I'm like, "Oh, we've already had those. I'm sorry."
Please, I mean, bring them back on. I need all the help playing Wukong that I can get.
I've thought about like
usually do well early and
revisiting
dick late.
some of those, but
we did with Mordekaiser, because if you remember, we had Latman do a Callista with like a 20-minute like bit on the new Mordekaiser, and then we had like a master tier Mordekaiser only player come on and talk about Mord afterwards. But I haven't thought about like revisiting a bunch of them. But what I did realize is that if you subscribe now, you get access to, and this sounds like if you do this in the next 15 minutes, you'll get, I don't know, 32 episodes, like
for $10,
just like that. Yeah, we've got, and they're very spread out. Like there's no lane that we're like harping on most. Like we're actually, I would say it's probably close to, maybe one lane has 25% or 30% at most. Maybe jungle, I think, because there've been a lot of those, but everything else is very.
I had somebody in Patreon the other day ask me about it, and he was like, "Well, I'll subscribe when you do more supports." I'm like, "We have 30 episodes. Here we go. There was like Bard. We have Thresh coming up. There was
we have Soraka, Nami,
Bard,
Braum, Bard. There's at least one more I'm thinking of.
Yeah, there's at least 5. There's 4 to 5 supports already out there. I'm like, if you're not subscribing now, you're missing out on a lot of content.
Is Scion the other support?
We haven't done Scion.
We have done Scion.
Oh wait, yes you did. You're right. See, there's 30 fucking champions. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, we're catching up. And apologies, guys. We know that we've been behind, but we literally pumped out 2 in the last 2 days, and we're going to be. Like, I think we might have one set up for this Sunday or next. And then there's another guy, the Thresh guy, should be soon as well. Plus, you get to hear a lot of interesting accents, because I know that the Kale episode was Danish. Guy was Danish. I think Finnish is the Shen dude. Now that Adam finally CC'd me on the email, it was pretty easy to talk to him.
Oh, he was still all happy to help out. I know he seemed a little angry.
He's like, "Where's Jen and Mitch?" Oh, it's because they never got the email because I sent this only to you, says Adam.
Yeah, that was my fault. I was harping on Mitch for a little bit, but I was like, I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I fucked up. Okay, I fucked up. It happens. Listen,
we
just
guys, mark it down.
Mark
it down. Episode 389. It happened. Whatever episode.
I want to let you all know out there in podcast land and hosts, episode number 400. I want you all to be ready. I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen on episode 400. It is going to be everybody needs to be there, because it's going to be a very, very, very special night. And all I'm going to say is you better bring your thinking caps.
Oh, fuck me.
It's going to be.
You're not going to be gone that week, are you?
Nope, I'm gone October 8th to 16th.
Because that would have been real.
I'm not here.
That would have been real awkward.
That would have been so funny.
No. That's his on-the-nose way of saying, like, "Hey, bring your thinking caps because I'm not helping this week."
Yeah.
Well, let's hear. This is $3.99, $3.91, $3.92. Oh, 89. So that's $3.90, or it's
Yeah. You won't be gone. I just checked.
It'll be in November if we do 2 episodes a week up until then. So it'll be either end of or mid-November when it happens.
Oh, guys, make sure to pay attention to those mid-October episodes where it's going to be very interesting to see what we come up with.
For a week when I have no internet access, yeah, it's gonna be great.
We might bring back getting real drunk on box wine. Probably not, but
Do it! It hasn't happened. Do it!
I'm not gonna do that. I have a job still that I'd like to. I don't like to attend it, but I like to attend it more sober than not.
He likes his money. All right, guys, that's episode number 307. I didn't change the title, 389, rather, of the Trinity Force podcast. Thank you so much for listening and supporting us. Please go sign up for our Patreon, patreon.com/TForce Network. We're using your money to bring you more content. Like, all of the money you've ever given us has gone back to people to bring more content. It's awesome. Guys, thank you so much for your support. Guys, we will see you all on Monday with more League of Legends discussion.
Yeah. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.